What if we told you that in just 1 hour, the balance of power in the Middle East was shaken to its core? That 10 Israeli warplanes fell from the sky and 100 missiles lit up the night in a strike so precise, so powerful, left the world speechless. This isn't just about weapons or politics. This is about strategy, defiance, and the rise of a new kind of warfare. In this speech, we're going beyond headlines. We're diving deep into the moment when Tehran turned silence into fire, when it proved to the world that it would not be cornered, crushed, or controlled. You're not just going to hear about missiles, you'll understand the message behind them. This is about resilience, about a nation rewriting the rules, and about how one calculated move forced superpowers to stop, stare, and rethink everything they thought they knew. Stay with us, because every second of this story reveals the truth behind the chaos. And by the end, you'll see why this hour didn't just change a conflict, it changed history. Tehran's bold counterattack represents more than just a military move. It is a calculated demonstration of strength in the face of relentless pressure. Following what many believe to be Israel's superior air power and tactical dominance, Iran's sudden and overwhelming second strike shattered that assumption in just 60 minutes. According to Iranian military sources, 10 Israeli aircraft were shot down, including advanced fighter jets conducting reconnaissance and potential strike missions near Iranian airspace and allied positions. Simultaneously, over 100 surface-to-surface missiles were launched targeting multiple strategic locations. These were not random retaliatory acts. This was a meticulously timed operation, with a message that Tehran intended the world to hear clearly. The element of shock was central to the success of this operation. Iranian missile units already placed on high alert seemed to act on predetermined coordinates, focusing their fire on Israeli air bases, drone control centers, and early warning systems. This not only crippled immediate air operations, but also sent ripples through the Israeli defense establishment, which had previously counted on its technological superiority to shield it from such large-scale barrages. Tehran's timing was key. By launching during a brief window of Israeli reorganization, after the first round of confrontation, they maximized the impact and exposed vulnerabilities. Moreover, the downing of 10 aircraft is a symbolic and strategic victory. Fighter jets represent not only military force, but political intimidation and deterrence. Taking them out of the sky, especially by a nation under intense sanctions and diplomatic isolation, projects a new narrative. Iran is not just surviving, it is adapting, evolving, and pushing back harder than anticipated. This counterattack also signals to Iran's regional allies and adversaries alike that Tehran retains operational control and the capacity for high-speed retaliation, regardless of the challenges it faces. The swiftness and coordination of the second strike challenged decades-old assumptions about Iran's capabilities. It showcases a new generation of missile systems, precision targeting technology, and perhaps most importantly, a confidence from Iranian leadership that they can escalate when necessary. Tehran's claim wasn't made in vague terms. It was specific, assertive, and calculated to shift the psychological dynamic in the conflict. It served as a wake-up call to those who underestimated Iran's ability to strike back decisively and rewrite the balance of confrontation in the region. Precision and planning were at the core of Iran's second strike, indicating that this was not a knee-jerk reaction, but a well-coordinated military maneuver. The sheer scale of the operation, 100 missiles launched and 10 aircraft allegedly downed in 1 hour, points to an infrastructure that was prepared, organized, and operating under a calculated command structure. Such precision suggests that Iran had not only anticipated an Israeli response, but had prepared a countermeasure in advance, possibly waiting for the right moment to deploy it for maximum effect. The speed with which Iran mobilized its missile systems and activated its air defense network indicates a high state of readiness, one that is not achieved overnight. Satellite imagery and intercepted intelligence, according to various defense analysts, hint at prepositioned missile units and command centers that had already been put on standby prior to the escalation. Missile launch pads were camouflaged and spread across multiple provinces to avoid total neutralization. In addition, the strike pattern wasn't scattered or symbolic. It was targeted and deliberate, focusing on airfields, intelligence hubs, and electronic warfare centers. The timing of these hits suggests Iran had detailed reconnaissance, possibly supported by regional surveillance or advanced satellite data, allowing it to strike with such deadly accuracy. What also stands out is Iran's ability to synchronize various military units, missile forces, radar systems, anti-aircraft batteries, and possibly cyber operations, all within the tight window of a single hour. Coordination on this level demands extensive planning, communication protocols, and real-time intelligence. These are not characteristics typically associated with a country that has long been seen as isolated or weakened by sanctions. Rather, it reflects a modernized command structure and technological advancement that many outside observers were not prepared to acknowledge. Furthermore, the psychological element of the planning cannot be ignored. By executing the strike with such calculated timing and effect, Iran not only delivered physical damage, but also psychological shock to its adversaries. It disrupted the assumption that Iran would act slowly or out of desperation. Instead, Tehran acted with the cold precision of a military that understands not just how to fight, but when and where to do so for maximum leverage. The message embedded within the planning was as powerful as the missiles themselves. Iran is not improvising. It is strategizing, watching, and waiting for exactly the right moment to act. Israel's initial response to Iran's bold claims has been marked by a notable and strategic silence, a move that has sparked intense speculation across diplomatic, military, and media circles. Typically, Israel is quick to counter narratives that could damage its image of military superiority or undermine national morale. Yet in this case, the government has refrained from providing a definitive confirmation or denial of the loss of 10 aircraft. This unusual silence has led analysts to believe that Israel is not simply regrouping militarily, but recalibrating its next strategic move in a far more complex and high-stakes conflict environment. This lack of immediate acknowledgement could serve multiple purposes. On one hand, it could be a deliberate tactic to deny Iran the psychological victory of seeing its narrative validated on the world stage. By refusing to engage in a tit-for-tat public exchange, Israel may be attempting to project control and composure, avoiding any sign of panic or vulnerability. On the other hand, the silence may indicate the seriousness of the situation. If the aircraft losses were indeed accurate, acknowledging them could signal a significant breach in Israeli defense capabilities, something the state may prefer to keep under wraps until it has developed an effective counter-response. Internally, this silence also serves to contain public anxiety and give the Israeli Defense Forces room to assess the damage, regroup, and potentially launch a more calculated and devastating response. This is not unfamiliar ground for Israel. Historically, it has opted for quiet assessments, followed by overwhelming retaliation, often under the radar of media until the moment of execution. The absence of a public statement doesn't mean inactivity. It may signify that something far larger is being planned behind closed doors. This ambiguity also keeps Iran and its allies guessing. Without confirmation, Tehran is left in a strategic limbo, uncertain whether it has landed a devastating blow or merely provoked the next stage of a brutal escalation. It's a psychological game being played as much in the war rooms as in the global media. Israel's silence, therefore, is not weakness. It may very well be strategic restraint, giving its leadership time to shift the narrative back in its favor. It reflects a nation that understands timing in warfare is everything, not just in missiles, but in words and perception. The scale and velocity of Iran's second strike sent immediate shockwave through the international community, triggering urgent diplomatic consultations and emergency security briefings across multiple global capitals. Within an hour, Tehran claimed responsibility for downing 10 Israeli aircraft and launching over 100 missiles in a targeted attack, a development that quickly shifted the geopolitical temperature of the region from tense to volatile. This was not just a local skirmish. It was an event with implications that extended well beyond the borders of Iran and Israel. World powers, particularly those with vested interests in the Middle East, began to reassess the situation with a new level of seriousness, fearing that the conflict may now spiral into a much larger and uncontrollable confrontation. The reaction was swift. The United States reportedly convened high-level defense meetings, weighing the possibility of being drawn further into a direct conflict if Israel were to retaliate in a way that expanded the war zone. European leaders, many of whom had been advocating for diplomatic resolution, suddenly found themselves alarmed by how quickly the situation had deteriorated. China and Russia, already deeply entangled in global strategic rivalries, issued carefully worded statements urging restraint, while simultaneously signaling that further escalation could jeopardize not only regional stability but global economic flows, especially oil and trade routes. Arab nations, many of whom have normalized or improved relations with Israel in recent years, were forced to walk a diplomatic tightrope. Public pressure from their populations, largely sympathetic to Iran's stance as a symbol of defiance against Western and Israeli power, clashed with their strategic partnerships and security agreements. For them, Iran's action raised the specter of being caught in the crossfire of a war they had tried hard to avoid. Iran's second strike also caused a stir within international institutions such as the United Nations and NATO. Security Council meetings were hastily organized, but divisions among member states made consensus difficult. The fear that this conflict could spill into neighboring territories or trigger proxy responses from aligned non-state actors added urgency to calls for immediate de-escalation. The psychological ripple effect of Iran's move was profound. Markets trembled, energy prices spiked, and global media painted a picture of uncertainty and dread. This wasn't just an attack, it was a turning point, forcing the world to confront the very real possibility that the Middle East was on the brink of a far wider and more dangerous war. Tehran's second strike was more than a demonstration of military capability. It was a carefully crafted message to the world, signaling Iran's resolve, autonomy, and defiance in the face of growing international pressure. By launching 100 missiles and allegedly downing 10 Israeli aircraft in one coordinated wave, Iran intended to make it undeniably clear that it would not remain passive under threat. Iranian leadership referred to the strike not as an act of war, but as a calibrated warning. A statement aimed not just at Israel, but at any power attempting to coerce or intimidate the Islamic Republic into submission. The terminology used by Iran's top officials carried calculated weight. They described the operation as a measured response, one intended to restore deterrence and remind adversaries that Iranian retaliation would come swiftly and decisively if provoked again. This messaging was aimed as much at the domestic audience as it was at the international community. For the Iranian public, the strike was positioned as a moment of pride, unity, and national dignity. It reinforced the government's narrative that Iran is not only capable of defending itself, but also of taking the fight to its enemies if pushed. After years of sanctions, isolation, and military provocations, the leadership used this moment to reassert Iran's sovereignty and to galvanize public support. At a time when internal dissent and economic hardship weigh heavily on the nation, projecting strength on the international stage serves to fortify national morale and suppress political fragmentation. To global audiences, especially to regional adversaries and Western powers, Iran's message was a strategic form of deterrence. It was a reminder that while Iran may be surrounded by hostile forces, it is neither helpless nor hesitant. Tehran signaled that any further aggression would be met with a response of equal or greater magnitude. The strike, in its scale and precision, was designed to challenge assumptions about Iran's military capability and to undermine narratives that it could be easily neutralized or cornered. Moreover, the political timing of the strike coincided with heightened diplomatic efforts to contain the crisis, making it clear that Iran intends to shape the terms of engagement, not simply react to them. Tehran's declaration that this was a warning underscores its desire to impose psychological pressure and force adversaries to reconsider the cost of escalation. Iran's second strike showcased more than just military retaliation. It revealed a significant shift in the nature of modern warfare. This was not a conventional battle driven by sheer numbers or brute force. It was a display of speed, coordination, and technological integration that marks the evolution of 21st century conflict. Within 1 hour, 100 missiles were launched with precision, and 10 Israeli aircraft were reportedly downed, reflecting not only Iran's growing technical capability, but also the transformation of the battlefield itself. The era of slow mobilization and predictable warfare is being replaced by fast, multi-layered, and high-tech engagements that prioritize disruption, confusion, and psychological dominance. Key to this new style of warfare is Iran's growing reliance on drones, missile technology, cyber tools, and advanced radar systems. Reports suggest that Iranian forces use radar jamming techniques and air defense systems to trap and neutralize Israeli jets. This indicates the presence of integrated electronic warfare capabilities that are typically associated with more technologically advanced militaries. By combining drones for surveillance, cyber measures to confuse enemy systems, and ballistic missile precision, Iran demonstrated its ability to execute multi-domain operations. This layered approach disrupts traditional defense mechanisms and creates chaos in enemy ranks even before the physical damage is done. The psychological impact of this style of warfare is also profound. Modern conflict is not just fought on land, sea, and air. It's fought in information spaces, digital networks, and public consciousness. Iran's rapid release of detailed footage, radar images, and controlled messaging aimed to dominate the narrative before Israel could craft its own. This tactic turns the media into a battlefield where perception shapes policy and public opinion becomes a force multiplier. Tehran's ability to shape global discussion within minutes of its strike underscores the strategic importance of information control in today's wars. Furthermore, the use of fast-paced, high-intensity operations leaves little time for adversaries to respond effectively, forcing them into reactive positions. Israel, known for its intelligence and rapid counterstrikes, found itself momentarily overwhelmed by the sheer speed and volume of Iran's offensive. This reveals a broader shift where time and tempo are as decisive as firepower. In this new era, the side that acts faster and communicates clearer often holds the advantage, even before traditional battle outcomes are assessed. Iran's strike in both method and execution has challenged long-standing doctrines and signaled that warfare is no longer about who has more, it's about who moves smarter. What unfolded in just 1 hour was not merely a clash of weapons, but a clash of narratives, willpower, and evolving warfare. We're on second strike, 10 Israeli aircraft down, 100 missiles launched, was more than a military maneuver. It was a declaration, a signal, and a transformation of the battlefield itself. Tehran did not act out of impulse, but with purpose, precision, and intent to reshape the balance of fear and control. As silence echoes from one side and confidence builds on the other, the world watches a new chapter unfold. One written in racket strikes, psychological warfare, and technological chess moves. This is not just about missiles in the sky, but messages sent across borders and minds. It is a moment that demands understanding, not just reaction. For in this age, survival belongs not to the strongest, but to the smartest, the fastest, and the most determined. Thank you for standing with us through this powerful journey of truth, strategy, and courage. Stay aware, stay inspired, and never stop seeking deeper meaning behind world events. May strength guide your path, wisdom sharpen your mind, and peace fill your heart. Until next time, good luck, and thank you for watching.